Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. If you're just joining us, you're in for a big treat today. This is webinar number 5 of a series, Emergency Rescue Webinar for Parents, where we work with you to help you educate your little ones before they drive you crazy. We have a very big host of characters here scholars to help us understand social emotional learning and the importance of social emotional learning. I mean, we've gone through quite a bit. We've gone through how to gather resources, how to put together lesson plans, how to assess properly, and some of the ways to build in reflection into your lessons. Or your education experience. So now we're going to talk about something very critical, social emotional learning. And what is social emotional learning and how do you do it and why should you do it as a parent in the midst of the tens of thousands of things that you are doing and then some. You know, it's nothing like teaching a first grader and a fourth grader and an 11th grader all in the same house. Congratulations, you've gotten this far. Don't give up. I know it's very tough. I've been reading some of your emails that you sent me telling me that, you know, it's just too hard. And kudos to you, licensed professionals. I never knew, and I'm not doing it. I'm not a teacher, and so I'm gonna call in early. I want to recommend that you just take a breath. You know, that's why we have holidays and schools are closed for certain times of the year, so that you can regenerate. Take a break. It's okay to take a break. And then come back with it and finish out the school year strong, okay? So we have, as you know, if you've been with us before, we have Ron Hennings with us, our co-host for the emergency website webinar for parents, emergency series webinar for parents. And so I'm gonna turn over to Ron. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, and you, Centae? I'm really honored to have assembled a wonderful team of panelists today. We have myself and there's Dr. Richards, and to complete our panel, we have Dr. Lynn McMahon, and Lynn is on your screen there. She's associate faculty. She co-coordinates the master's degree in school counseling, and Lynn's been at this for a long time, just like me. And we have Dr. Tara Gray, who's associate faculty as well. Here at Prescott College, she co-coordinates the master's degree in counseling as well, school counseling. We also have Mrs. Allison Holtz, who's associate faculty, a coordinator of the Center for Nature and Place and specializes in early childhood education. And finally, we have Mrs. Dana Talamonte Montoya. She's associate adjunct faculty, 16 years as a middle school counselor, now a middle school principal, who brings a great deal of expertise from the classroom and from the school level itself.
I'm Dr. Richards, and I'm the Assistant Dean for Education and Professional Preparation at Prescott College. This is a webinar sponsored by Prescott College. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact education@prescott.edu. Back to you, Ron.
Well, at this time, I'd like to, first of all, maybe before I introduce Dr. McMahon, who's going to start off our discussion, I just want to say to parents, we're here to help. We live all over the country. We're practitioners, we're scholars, but practitioners foremost. And between the panel and myself and Dr. Richards, we probably have 150 to more years experience in education. So hopefully you can bring some insights to parents and support to parents as they go through these difficult times. I'll just mention my daughter has 2 of my grandsons, and she's gotten so frustrated. I told her last night, tell the boys they're promoted, I'll sign their cards in the morning. But of course, she said, no, we'll continue on. Okay, now we have Dr. McMahon.
Good morning. I'd like to introduce this topic today. We've titled it Introduction to Social Emotional Skills and Behavioral Health, Risks and Resources, of which we have many to share with you today. I'm going to introduce this topic by saying that there are tens of millions of students who are dealing with this massive upheaval to their education and daily lives, and their physical schools are closed indefinitely in some locations. Parents and family members are at home with them, or they're having others share their home to help their students. everyone is navigating through this new normal with COVID-19. Beyond the isolation, there are fears over the pandemic that could sicken individuals or their loved ones. Just recently, I had a friend who told me that she had had it and was hospitalized for quite a while in another state, not where she lived, before she was able to recover and go home. Students and their families now, more than ever, need strong social and emotional skills to adjust to this new reality that might, quite frankly, last through not only the end of the school year, but could last beyond. Educators and parents around the globe are managing and working through this dramatic shift to the practice of teaching and learning. Our focus for you today in this final webinar is to give you tools focused on social and emotional learning support, as well as mental health support for you and your students. Our experts today, as all these wonderful people who've been introduced to you, and my favorite people, will help you with introducing support areas in different age levels. We'll have wonderful Allie, who will be talking about early childhood, Tara, who will be talking about elementary, Dana, who will be talking about high school, and Ron, middle school, and Ron, who will be talking about high school. And our hope is that there will be overlap between all of us that can help you with any age level of student that you're working with, and yourselves. And help you with this social, emotional, and mental health and well-being. So, what is social and emotional learning? Or as we like to call it in the education field, SEL, social emotional learning. In general, it focuses on a set of social, emotional, behavioral, and character skills that support success in school, the workplace, relationships, and the community. And this came from a book that it's my Bible, as you can see. It's got many, many little tags on it. It's called All Learning is Social and Emotional, helping students develop essential skills for the classroom and beyond. And beyond right now is your home. It's by Fry, Fisher, and Smith. As someone who has worked in classrooms as a teacher, in schools as an administrator, and a consultant and trainer for districts nationally and internationally, I have been a strong supporter of this teaching and learning essential for nearly 3 decades, probably closer to 4, through a process called Tribes. Tribes focuses on building resilient, independent learners through classroom community and social and emotional skill building. And I've put Tribes as a resource for you to take a look at. Social emotional learning skills include 1, recognizing and managing emotions, which is difficult when you're stressed and in an anxious state. It's setting and achieving positive goals, both personal and academic, establishing and maintaining positive, mutually respectful relationships, making responsible decisions and effectively solving problems and challenges, and handling interpersonal situations constructively. When we consider the technical challenges and the fear and restriction caused by this pandemic, we are beginning to see that students are experiencing greater trauma. Stress and trauma could remain with many of our young people after this crisis is over, and the time to build a safety net for our children is right now. Coping with and managing this traumatic time and change are critical in overcoming these challenges and helping students further develop their social and emotional learning skills. This will help them. We know that young people need a web of positive relationships to cope with stressful events. Now more than ever, all of us, parents, teachers, and our communities need to be intentional about putting in place practices that enable every student to be known and supported. Strong relationships and building skills will impact the COVID-19 carryover. The following trauma-informed practices, which I know will be brought up in a little bit more detail with you, align themselves well with building social-emotional learning skills. Author and professor Alex Chevron-Bennett says these 4 things are very critical during this time. Connection. Relationships are key to resilience. So anything that you can do to foster relationships should be a priority right now. And because the coronavirus pandemic has disrupted many of these relationships, Bennett recommends that teachers and parents in the community help students connect with each other, with family, and with their community. So for example, I had a birthday party with my family because my brother turned 68 on Monday. And it was wonderful seeing my nephews who live in different parts of the country, and my brothers and their wives, and my niece and her little ones. That's what I'm talking about with connection. The other one is empowerment. Trauma takes power from people. So trauma-informed practices need to be thought out critically from all of the adults that are working with children. Educators and parents should focus instead on empowering students through shared decision-making and authentic choice. Empowerment applies to assignments as well. So teachers, give your students problems to solve rather than worksheets. Ask what they're interested in. For parents, ask what your students are interested in. What are the stories around this? We talked a little bit about this last week when we were talking about reflection. Give them tools to think about, how am I affecting the world around me? The third one is predictability. Trauma can create intense feelings of unpredictability. And whether students have experienced trauma or not, COVID-19 has upended normal life for kids and adults alike. The loss of our usual habits can cause shock and grief. So one way we can prioritize predictability is by creating routines. And lastly, flexibility. Because trauma involves a loss of control, inflexible teaching and parenting methods can trigger some students into survival mode, and thus behavioral aspects will occur. Bennett encouraged all of us to notice what students need and collaborate with them to find routines, resources, and strategies that will best support them. We need to ask ourselves, what's really important in education at this time? And so with that, I'm going to turn this next stage over to my friend Tara Gray, who's going to talk to you about elementary students and schools.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to focus on 4 particular topics that I'm always finding helpful when I work with parents of elementary age students, so approximately 5 years old to 10 years old. And this really parallels what Lynn was saying, because one of the 4 topics I'll discuss is empowerment and choices. I'm primarily going to be using a PowerPoint, so I'm going to share my screen here. Oh, can you allow that, host, please, so I may share my PowerPoint?
So what we're going to do is, if you could read the PowerPoint at this time, and then we will get the PowerPoint to the host, because they can't share the screen with you to share at this time. Oh, now you can. So go ahead and share your screen.
Oh. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So the 4 topics I wanted to focus on are creating a visual schedule for your family or for your child, validating feelings, empowering children with choices, like Len referred to, and reinforcing the positive. So when it comes to validating and, pardon me. So for creating a visual schedule, I found a lot of internet resources that were helpful, and we have a resource handout for watchers as well. And this allows a sense of control because it has set routine and schedule and sort of a controlled element to a child's day. It's important to have flexibility with it and include lots of breaks, and also to include lots of time for play and relaxation for both children and parents. Okay, so when it comes to validating and empathizing with emotions, in my offices, I have lots of posters and feelings cards and many ways for children of all ages to point to the emotions that they're feeling and facilitate a conversation around emotions. However, I don't have my tools with me at home, and I found this resource here, Self-Regulation and Zones of Regulation website that it's linked to, and I will share with you next, helpful. But a way to just verbally recognize a child's emotions is by saying something like, you're feeling frustrated that you have to do school online and don't get to see your friends. So that validates the frustration that many students are feeling right now, along with parents. So in this website here, there are not only feelings, which are so important, from sad, worried, scared, frustrated, but also coping skills. So some of the ones they've highlighted here are counting to 10, drinking water, drawing, talking to an adult. So they have almost 20 choices here that children and parents can refer to in terms of coping skills along with feelings. So this is a helpful website. Also, in my over 25 years of school counseling, I typically do a feelings thermometer for children, but I found this one for parents from Pfeiffer et al. 2018, and I wanted to share this with parents because this is parenting in general is stressful. Parenting in COVID-19 virus shelter at home is particularly stressful. So what I like about this is it gives parents and families a way to look at it also for adults. How are you feeling when you're calm, excited, agitated, and it even has explosive. So I like this tool. I found it helpful. One of my favorite activities to do with children can be done with children of all ages, even as young as 3, and it can be done as a family activity as well. And this is from Goodyear Brown 2002. It's the rice cake feelings faces. It just requires materials that you may have at home, some of those little rice cakes you find at the store, icings, candy, dried fruit, nuts, gummy worms, Twizzlers. It's really fun to have a variety and let children create a face to express how they're feeling. And then you can take a picture of it so you can use that later for referring to feelings and expressing feelings. And then they're edible. So that's the fun thing about this activity. And so I wanted to share that as something you can do. Also, and this is what Len was referring to in terms of empowering children by giving them choices. So as a school counselor, I've had parent meetings recently where I'm talking with parents who are trying to keep their kids on a very rigid, very productive academic schedule. And then this time we want to give kids flexibility and choices. And so she started offering choices and found that it helped a lot with her second grade son. So an example of that could be, okay, you can do your homework now, after lunch, or after dinner, you choose. That sends the message to the child that you trust that they can make their own choice. And it gives them that chance to choose and feel powerful about when they choose to do their work. So I wanted to share that technique. Also, when it comes to empowering, I like this activity as a family activity, and you can use this in many ways, but this is an example from Pfeiffer et al. 2018 with chores. So you can take any strips of paper and write the chores for your family and household, and then you can put them in a hat or jar or basket or whatever you have available so that people can't see what's written on them. And then you can mix up your routine with chores and family duties and responsibilities by letting each family member or letting a child choose from the bag or hat, and then it makes it more of a fun activity and adds some random choice to what could be a stale routine at home. And this can also be done with rewards or other homework tasks that need to take place. So you can put down on strips of paper all the academic activities that need to happen during a day or week, and then the child can select activities. So I wanted to share that. I also wanted to talk about positive reinforcement, and I have this website here I wanted to share with you that really goes into more of the science and details that you can investigate on your own. That's at positivepsychology.com, parenting positive reinforcement. And that I wanted to share that they emphasize that the positive to constructive feedback or negative comments should be 5 to 1. So positive 5 to 1. Some of that verbal praise can sound like, looks like you're working hard on that. I look happy, you look happy when you're playing video games, or when you're doing science, or when you're learning to type on that iPad app. Or I like how you're focused when we're talking at the dinner table, or whatever behavior you're seeing that you really want to point out and reward. So in addition to verbal praise, earning points or stickers like a chore or goals chart can be effective. Here's a very simple example that I'm sharing here. The goals here where I will take deep breaths and say positive thoughts, and I will do homework for 1 hour, 3 to 4 nights per week. This was per pre-virtual school. Okay, so I wanted to share those with you and emphasize that. You can also use dried beans or marbles and put them in a jar, and when the child reaches a certain point with beans or marbles, they can earn something that's rewarding and valuable to them, like time riding bikes with mom, or time watching movies with dad, or time on the iPad. Okay, this is one of my favorite activities to reinforce family strengths, which is always important, but especially in this important time of COVID-19 and shelter in place. So this is an activity that can be done with any materials that you have at home, from small paper to large paper to any canvases or other materials you'd like to use. And so you want to have your supplies like paints and crafts, maybe magazines available. And then each family member can select an item or draw something that they see as a strength in the family and then share that. So So everyone gets to create sort of a collage that's like a shield, a coat of arms of family strengths. And this can be something that you may start with a picture of your family. And then each family member creates something and adds something. And then that's something they can always share and have and reflect on as a family. And then as I wrap up here, I wanted to share the references that I used primarily today. I pulled heavily from Pfeiffer et al., which is the parenting toolbox of activities. I also wanted to share 2 new books that were published recently. One is from 2018, The Self-Driven Child, The Science and Sense of Giving Your Children More Control Over Their Lives, and one that was just published this year called Ready or Not, Preparing Our Kids to Thrive in an Uncertain and Rapidly Changing World, which actually has chapters on academic and functional skills in an age of uncertainty and thriving in the new normal. And this was pre-COVID-19. So I think there's some good material in there that you might want to check out. Thank you.
Excellent material for building a very, cohesive and social, emotionally adept and nimble family. There's, Lynn, I was just thinking about situations when that's not necessarily the case, when you don't have all of the parental units in place, for example, that can be quite a devastating blow to social emotional development as well as learning. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and yes, and I think the key really is that teachers or whoever is managing the situation for students who might be home with grandparents or with neighbors or whatever, is that teachers really need to help support this situation. And if they're absent, then counselors, and I know our counselors are reaching out to students all over the country, trying to make sure that they're safe and healthy and well. So it really takes a whole village, a whole community to help support our young ones. And it starts with the early childhood, which is fantastic because we have expert Allie Houts with us today. So
thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to be talking about social emotional support, as Lynn said, keeping parents and families of young children in mind. We as families are going through so much right now in the midst of everything that's happening in our world and our communities. Juggling our daily responsibilities, maybe even continuing jobs in the midst of this pandemic. And many are now without childcare and early learning support that we may have been used to before. My hope in our time together is we can take away some strategies to support you and your relationship with your children, also some encouragement as we continue through this season of parenthood. So the first resource I'm going to highlight comes from the National Association for the Education of Young Children, also known as NAEYC. It's called Building Social and Emotional Skills at Home. And all the resources I will be talking about today will be available to you. One of the things that this resource highlights is the importance of play. I'm going to be piggybacking many of the areas that Tara was talking about, but specific to young children. This resource talks about the importance of play, not only for children, because play is children's work. It's what's important to them. It's how they navigate their world, how they develop, but also how they work out anxiety in their world. And when we participate in that and join in with them, we can not only support their development, but foster our precious relationship with them. Some easy tools that we can do with them at home is using puppets, thinking out loud, reading bedtime stories, doing jobs together, playing games. And one of the things that's really important in this season, especially at home, is to prevent potential problems that could take place. Things that you can do to support that is giving a 5-minute reminder before it's time for dinner. Maybe reminding them or letting them know when something's going to change in the day for their routine. Maybe talking with them multiple times about why they can't see their friends or why they're not at school or why they can't go see grandma right now. Those things can be challenging, and when we can give them reminders, it's helpful. So the next resource comes from Prevent Child Abuse Arizona, and Arizona Strengthening Families. And it discusses protective factors and how important that is. Children in our communities and in our homes are really vulnerable right now with all that's taking place. It's important to look at protective factors in the family unit as resources for you, or maybe your community and those you know may be decreasing with financial strain. Stressors in the home may rise. The best thing we can do as parents is to put protective measures in place to strengthen the family unit, and this prevents child abuse and neglect. So some of those things are parental resilience. How do we hold hope for ourselves as parents? Knowing that we're doing the best that we can with what we have and holding hope for now and the future. The next one is social connections. That's tricky right now. It looks different than it usually does in day to day, but we still can stay connected. We can call, we can be using things like FaceTime and Zoom. We can even wave across the street at a neighbor who's taking out the trash or the mail. Those little things go a long way. The next is knowledge of parenting and child development. We know our children best, but it only serves us and our families to increase our toolbox, as I'd like to call it. The next is concrete support in time of need. This is probably the most important in this season. We can support each other in our community, even at a distance. Call your parenting friends, especially those with young children who are at home, and especially the ones working. It's a lot to juggle right now, and check in on them, see how they're doing. And that supports not only your family unit, but your community, and knowing that you're not alone. The final piece for protective factors is social and emotional competency of young children. Tara talked about this, and when we can increase not only children's vocabulary surrounding words with emotions, but also the understanding behind them, going more in depth. What does it mean to be lonely? What does it mean to be disappointed, to be frustrated, to be tired, to be confused? But also the freedom to express those emotions in safe ways and in a safe environment. That supports children's development. And maybe even going further, how do we safely model big, hard, good emotions and everything in between so that we can give our children permission to do the same? All right, and then the next resource comes from First Things First, a resource called Parenting in the Time of the Coronavirus and Social Distancing. And I'm actually going to share a video with you.
Right or not quite? A baby as young as 2 months can sense the moods of adults. Right. Very young children sense and respond to the emotions of parents and caregivers. By keeping calm around your child, you help them feel calm and happy in return. And it's important to a baby's healthy development that they feel safe and secure. Staying positive and in control of your emotions is part of how you can help them grow and thrive. So keep your cool. They're picking up on your signals.
So the theme with this short but powerful video is, there is no perfect parent. We're doing the best that we can with what we have, and when we can give ourselves some grace in that, not only us, but our children and the people around us in this season, it's very important. The next video is a very quick one, and you can take a look at that in the link. Talks about, can a baby sense your mood? And the answer is yes. Our emotions are powerful, and it's good to be aware of that. And when we mess up as parents, when we can be reactive, when we're stressed, recognize it. Say it out loud that you're having a hard time, and that goes a long way. All right. Going on to the next resource, final resource. So this is from the resource 0 to 3. And I think it's important to note that it can be hard in this season for young children who miss family, friends, and loved ones. Being able to connect virtually is powerful in this season, and when you're not able to be in close proximity. Ways to make this even more personal for young children when you're on a video chat or Zoom or FaceTime is to use props. You can make it really fun, especially if you're talking with a grandparent or a loved one. Be silly together. The next one talks about be the hands and heart of the person in the other screen. If your child's comfortable with it, Maybe an aunt or uncle blows a kiss, you can kiss them on the cheek. If they give the screen a hug, you can do that in response. And it makes it that much more personal for the loved ones that you miss on the other side. If there's technical difficulties, share that with your child. Why did the phone battery die? Why are you having feedback that the other person on the other end will be back? And then finally, let children take the lead with technology as they grow. And you can modify this for older children as well. And I think it's really important, as a final note, is to know that you as a parent have what it takes. We're doing the best that we can in the midst of this season. And for so many parents, you are juggling your full-time work now, maybe in the home, an environment you're not used to, especially with young children. Give yourself grace and make that relationship the center of everything that you're doing with young children. And that can be enough.
Thank you so much for that. I still keep thinking about how, ways in which we can help understand when someone is being traumatized. We were talking about earlier trauma-informed practices, and what are some ways, any of you, that parents can identify when there's perhaps a traumatic instance happening, particularly with the middle schoolers, which they're a little bit less communicative. Does anyone have any tips? What are some warning signs of internal trauma?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed over my decades worth of working with children and having family of my own is that when you have children acting out in ways that you're not used to seeing them do that, maybe they're having a tantrum. I mean, adults have tantrums, so it's not unusual to see children do that. But when they are doing something out of the ordinary, then you need to stop and say, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Let's talk about this. Or have a redirection of some kind. Maybe it's making those cute little happy and sad faces with the rice cakes or whatever you have in the home. But it is really being conscious and aware of how everybody is feeling. And when those behaviors exhibit themselves, like for example, in my neighborhood, we have some middle schoolers that are running around, ringing on doorbells and all of that. I'm not sure where their parents are or what's happening, but it's a little disturbing when you have to be 6 feet away and you don't want to discipline them. They're not your children. But these kinds of things mean that they're needing something more. So what is it, that something more that we can give? So I'd like to have Dana answer that, because she's working with middle schoolers and she has some great tidbits for us.
Yes, I'm really interested in this. We have Dana Talamante Montoya with us, and because particularly with the middle schoolers and the high schoolers, the teenagers, as all of those new chemicals get flowing, they barely know what to do with their own bodies, yet alone their emotions and feelings, right? Is that right, Dana?
Oh, yes. It's so right. And I don't think kids even recognize that, right? They don't understand that they have that crazy affect going on. They don't have the ability to recognize. But I think first thing I wanted to kind of start out with is how exciting is it that Prescott College is doing this for families and going beyond the walls of students and reaching out to a community. It really speaks volumes to me as an adjunct person. So that's awesome. So Dr. Richards, thank you. The other thing that I think is really important for us to identify is what Tara had said earlier about creating schedules with students. Middle school students will get into this mode where they're already on summer break. right? School was canceled. They're on summer break. They're not wanting to do anything. And so it's really important for them to also have a visual schedule so that they are being accountable. Parents can see what they're doing. Parents know that they are working, but they're also checking in with them and giving them that contact that Lynn had talked about earlier with communication and empowerment. They're giving kids the ability to follow the routine, but they're also checking up on them to make sure that they are accountable. But really, really honestly, if students don't have, middle school students don't have a schedule to follow, they're not going to follow it. They will be on Fortnite, they will be on social media, they will be making TikTok videos left and right without having that structure. It's so funny because the other thing that I think is really important to identify is I'm a mom and I have an 11-year-old and a 10-year-old. And my 11-year-old is in the middle school and I'm still working because I'm still reaching out to kids. So I think it's really hard for me to hold my 11-year-old to the fire, right? He wants to do whatever. He gets on his computer and he's doing Google Classroom, so he tells me, but he's not. And so it's really about trying to just keep continuing to check in with kids. I always recommend to my families when I'm working with them, have your kids show you what he's done. Bring the computer over, sit it down, have him walk you through Google Classroom. If parents don't know what Google Classroom is, I know a lot of schools are using Google Classroom right now as their platform. You can be invited, email the teachers, let the teachers know that you want to see that. And then you get a summary report of what the kids should be working on. And then you can tell your kid, like I do mine, you had problem of the week. Did you get it done? Show me, let me see it. And that way you're also creating time with your kids, right? You're sitting with them, you're letting them know that they are important, because as middle school kids, they need that social connection with their friends. And right now they're not getting it. And so this is where, Centae, you talked about those shutdowns and kids aren't able to talk about their feelings, right? They turn into themselves. And so without that social contact, nobody is checking on them, or they're behind a screen and they have no idea what their comment may have meant. You know, I had a student the other day that posted, and it was a song lyric, but love me when I'm gone. Well, I can't see that kiddo, and I don't know what he's, you know, I didn't know it was a song lyric. And so without being able to reach out and ask him, hey, what's going on? What was that about? And then I get, oh, it's a song lyric. He was listening to a song, and so he was just processing that. But it's asking those questions. Ali said being there is really important. Just making sure that you're there for middle school kids. That's what they need. The other thing that you should really do for middle school students, you have a daily schedule set up, you're checking in with your teachers, you have a Google Classroom that you're getting invited to, but make sure you have a designated space, because kids will go, middle school kids will go into the room, shut the door, and shut themselves off. And that's where we can see a lot of bullying on social media, because they'll get on their phones. They will get onto Snapchat and people will put them down, and then they're not getting connected because they're behind the door. And so if you have a setup somewhere that's visual where they can sit, you can be monitoring as a parent what are on those screens and what they're doing. You are able to then have those conversations with your kids to make sure that they're not being hurt and they're not hurting anybody else. One of the other big things that I think is really important is, Christy, if you would share that Venn diagram for us to kind of look at, that would be awesome.
Well, Christy is bringing up that the Venn diagram. I mean, I want to touch on one of the things that you said. It's very important. Well, I have a question about what you said, which was talking about let me see the work. And what tips can we give parents that have no idea about the advanced content material that perhaps some of the students might be working with?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you should do as a parent, if you don't recognize or you can't help, reach out to the teacher. I know teachers right now are so sad that they are missing students. They go into teaching so that they can have that contact with kids. And so right now they're just as lonely as students are. And so they welcome feedback. I know a lot of teachers that I've been working with, not just in my community, but in other communities, they are able to respond in a timely manner. They set up meetings and they walk parents through exactly what they need. So I think first and foremost, reach out to your kiddos' teachers. Have them, if you have any questions, have them walk you through so that you can help your kid in a better way.
Christy, we're seeing your screen. You may want to go back to the Venn diagram so we are not in your email box. But did you want to begin speaking about the Venn diagram?
Yeah, so I think when COVID-19 first came out, we all were in this kind of fear response, right? And so if you see on the Venn diagram, it has the fear zone. That's kind of where we were. That's why we had the rash of toilet paper being bought up. People were going a little to the extremes. And so that's working from a place within fear, right? Everything scares me. I complain frequently, forward all messages I receive. And so that relates to like Facebook. It's kind of like those chain messages. If you don't do this, you'll have some bad luck for the rest of your life. And that's definitely working from a fear zone. And we have a lot of students that can work in that way, especially middle school students, because they don't know how to react and they hear their parents talking. They don't understand what's going on, but they are older, that they understand a little bit more. So we have to be really good at walking them through and explaining things to them to get them to a learning zone. And this is where they're able to start to have control over their feelings. And this is for us as well, right? As adults, we can have that control in the learning zone, become aware of the situation, get both sides of it, figure out what's right, and then figure out what you have to do as an adult so that you can help your kids better relate to the world. And then ultimately what we would like to do is kind of go along that philosophy of Carol Dweck, being in the growth mindset, but being in that growth zone. I'm thankful, I'm appreciative, I have a happy state of mind. I'm happy that I'm here, I'm happy that I'm healthy. I'm happy that my kids are working on Google Classroom, all of those different areas. So yeah, that's the big thing that I think is important for families to kind of look and read through and know that we're all in this together. We are really learning together, and we're all going to experience fear, learning, and growth. And our middle school students are going to have emotions that are probably bigger than most because they don't, they're hormonal. They have all those things going on that they just react differently. The last thing that I kind of wanted to share is, Christy, if you would put up the time capsule. Thank you. So this is a colleague of mine shared this with me, and it is such a cool activity for kids to do with families. If you scroll through it, there's an area for students to identify exactly what are they doing right now. Where are they? How do they feel? Any type, they can get newspaper clippings, glue them on there, take pictures of yourself, silly quarantine pictures with toilet paper rolls and paper towel rolls, And then there's a place for parents to write a letter to their students. And I think that's super important to do because we don't do that a lot. And especially with our middle school students, parents just kind of have, like, we want to give them room to grow because they're, you know, becoming young adults, that we don't usually often take that time to really acknowledge what they're doing and how well they've kind of rolled with the punches. And so this is kind of a fun little activity to do as a family. And then put it away and save it, and 10 years from now, pull it back out and be able to look at it and see, dang, look at what we did. We survived that. How amazing.
That's always really fun to do. And that's a very, very interesting. These are on the resource website as well, right? Where we have this shared with the parents. Yes. That's an excellent resource and very useful, and you can use them again and again and again in multiple situations, and that really helps to improve their self-esteem. Wouldn't you say, Ron?
Yes, from the high school perspective, I would say that everything Dana said and all the resources she made available would apply well to high schoolers. Just don't tell them it's a middle school activity.
And you know, because you know they need a little bit more, less structure, but more support in lots of ways. That's going to get them to get through their adolescent development stage, because a lot of people don't know this, but you know, puberty is a lot different from adolescent development. Puberty is all the chemical things that happen to your body, and your body will be mature a lot faster than your brain has completed. It's by the time your brain completes its journey, most men are in their early to mid 30s in adolescent development, and women, you're not too far ahead with the late 20s. Early 30s. So neuroplasticity is the way to go. Ron, did you have any more comments about self-esteem for high schoolers, neuroplasticity?
I do. You know, so high schoolers are much more independent learners, so they'll need less of your attention. In fact, you'll probably get fired as their math tutor fairly soon. But what they do need is your support and their emotional support. And they won't maybe ask for it, so just give it whether it's asked for or not, because they do need it. And tell them how powerful they are, that their brains are powerful. Yes, that some of these calculus problems and the physics problems are challenging, but they've got the wherewithal to solve these problems. And they may have to design their own solutions to the problems and support their creativity and their self-efficacy. We want them to feel confident through success, confidence that comes from repeated success. And reinforce their patterns of success. Remind them of how they've worked through other difficult problems and how you as an adult have worked through other difficult problems. One healthy habit of the mind is to show them how to study a problem, look it over, create a plan of action, act on that plan of action, and then reflect on how successful it was or where it needed to be improved. I'm going to turn my time now, the rest of my time over. By the way, Dana, I will say trust and verify when working with middle schoolers and high schoolers too. Yes, you trust them, but verify that they've done their work.
Absolutely.
And ask them to show you how they did their work. But I'm going to turn the rest of the time over to Lynn.
And while Lynn is talking, I just want to say how they did it will really shed the light on whether or not it was copied or whether or not it came from their own heads. Lynn?
Yeah, I just want to close with a little activity. I've been studying mindfulness-based stress reduction for a number of years now, and much of the work that I do with my students and with my clients, as far as districts and schools, has to do with mindfulness-based practices. And when you saw that little thermometer that Tara showed earlier, that really is where it is. You are the master of your own universe. And to be able to do that, you must have practices that keep you in that zone of calm and control of your emotions, really. And it doesn't mean that you won't get angry, and it doesn't mean that you won't get frustrated, or that you will spout out and regret what you've said later. But the more that you can practice breathing and settling into yourself and being okay with right now is right now. I can't do anything about what's going to happen in the future. I can only control what's happening right now. I am the person in control. And so when I'm with my children, when I'm with my spouse or my animals, if I'm in that calm state of being, then everything else will start matching that energy level. So I'm going to teach you a couple of quick little activities for bringing in your breathing and your mindfulness into a good steady state. And these are great for kids too. So the first one is really to take a secondhand clock, and now we have it on our phones, which is really cool. You don't have to have a watch, but time the number of breaths, the normal number of breaths that you have during a 60-second period of time. If when you've counted those breaths after that 60 seconds, your breath number is like 15 or 16, that's too many breaths in a single minute. So slow that breath down. If you can get your breath down to about 9 breaths per minute, you will be in that calmer state of being. So when your temperature starts rising, stop, breathe. Make sure that you're counting your breaths to that normal number of breaths that will be helpful for your body and your well-being. The other one is a really simple, wonderful exercise that you can do with all ages of people. I used to do this with my teachers in my trainings. So take your hands and give yourself some energy, and you can feel the friction between, and then separate your hands. And you can feel the energy between your two hands. Whatever dominant hand you have, whether it be your right or your left, take your index finger. And as you take your index finger, you're going to breathe up the opposite hand thumb, breathe out to the whatever this is called, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down. And then change hands. Take your index finger, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down, breathe up, breathe down. And what that does is two things. It slows your breath down. It brings your attention to something other than what's happening at the particular moment, like the dog barking in the background. And it gives you that opportunity to settle into the earth and be that calming presence that you need to be in this very challenging time. So those are just two little mindfulness exercises, and there are a ton, and I'm happy to share some resources for you. But I want to thank you so much for being with us today. We really do appreciate all of your hard work and everything that you're doing for your kids and for all of us. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Lynn. Dr. McMahon, this has been the emergency webinar for parents. And in case the teaching bug has caught you as you go through this journey with your students, we do have online teaching licenses available in mild to moderate special education, elementary education, secondary education, early childhood education, early childhood special education, school counseling, and principalship and leadership. Financial aid and scholarships are available. If you have any questions about that, please contact admissions@prescott.edu. If you have any questions about the content of this or any other website webinar series that we put on during this time, you can contact education@prescott.edu. Then in both cases, that is prescott.edu. Ron Hennings, Dr. McMahon, Dr. Tara Gray, Dana Talamante Montoya, Allison House, thank you so much for being here. And for all you parents, we're here for you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay well educated. Thank you very much.